On our website, and I'll share links for this before the end of the call, we have a community and education toolkit space on our website, which is where you can download our additional educational toolkits. So, for example, for those of you that might have younger children in your life or work in primary schools or know others who do, these are a set of exercises that, and again, there's greater freedom we found for primary schools to do this kind of activity because they're not so bound to curriculum. There's a lot more creativity we've experienced within primary schools, and so we give some suggested activities here to facilitate again the learning on the climate and nature crisis, and it being really interactive. And we do here actually provide links to other videos and other resources, other books, so that again we're supporting children in a really dynamic way of learning. And the opportunity to talk and play with each other too. And importantly, some nature-based activities as well, so that we're supporting children with their engagement outside of the classroom to really build that connection with nature and to understand what can be quite a complicated subject matter when it comes to climate change. So we have this, there's this opportunity here for a teacher to put on lots of jumpers to show all the different layers of warming that the atmosphere is bringing to the planet. So all of this is leading towards the imaginative and creative exercise of writing a letter to the earth, and especially here we're imagining what the earth would say. So as I said at the top of the call, the invitation to write a letter is deliberately broad. We say you can write a letter to or from anything on earth, and so this also gives children the opportunity, which they really love, to consider the perspective of another species or the earth herself and what they have to say, what their wisdom or messages or challenges might be, and to use some of that content in the process of writing the letter as well. But we can see how these activities can lead to lots of different creative outputs. But here we go, is where we end on the invitation to write a letter. And I won't go through the prompts. So I'm going to invite us to write a letter shortly with these prompts. But here, as always, we encourage the sharing of letters. Letters are meant to be read by other people. They're meant to be exchanged. And so we do encourage people to consider how they want to do that. Who needs to hear them? How can they be heard? How can they be amplified? Can they be turned into a bigger piece of artwork or some kind of action? So that's for our primary school age range, and then secondary school age range 12 to 16 is similar in its process. Again, we have different resources here to support the learning. And these are all activities that teachers can essentially pick and choose from. So we deliberately don't give a time structure or a schema here. These are activities that a teacher can pick and choose from and shape over a course of time that best suits them. The act of writing a letter could in itself be just one activity that a whole day is dedicated to, or one lesson is dedicated to. But here again, we have some nature connection activities. We have some more debating opportunities for the secondary school children, pupils, and learning around what it means to be a land defender and looking to other places in the world in terms of the climate and nature impacts and how people are responding to them. And then we also give, so from a literary perspective, especially this suits in particular English literature or English language classes, to actually study one of our letters as a piece of literature. And we give questions here as to how the emotion is conveyed, how is this an impactful letter, and to inquire into the person behind the letter, because all of our letters are written by real people. And so again, all of that leads the young people to consider, well, what would my letter say? And they might be a little bit more rhetorical with their letter writing, or think about the argument they want to use. They might want to be strategic with who they want to send their letter to, or it can be a creative activity or something for the community as well. So I will send you these links, and what I will do, let's see if the video is going to work. I thought it'd be nice to hear one letter from a young person. So this is a letter from, some of you may have heard of Anishwa Kunchula. He's a very young climate ambassador and spokesperson who got activated a few years ago through writing a letter to the earth in his school in Warrington, and has since been on, oh gosh, there's a famous, Britain's Got Talent. He was on Britain's Got Talent a few years ago, specifically conveying his message of his love for the natural world. So it just says a lot about the power of young people and how far their voice can actually spread if we're giving them the encouragement and the tools. So let's hope this video will work.
Hello everyone, my name is Anishwa and I'm 7 years old and I live in Warrington in England. This is my letter to the earth. Dear Earth, thank you for being our only home for millions of years. I'm also thankful for all the birds, mammals and fish in the sea, and all the tardigrades to the blue whales. I'm sorry that your wonderful creatures are disappearing. Some people are fighting for your well-being, when most of the people I think are mean. Are destroying your wonderful animals and habitats and polluting your seas and air, which is... I hope you recover from the missing habitats and decreasing of amazing animals. This is my motto: save the animals and make sure the earth looks beautiful. Love, Anishwa.
This is how AI optimizes my schedule. This meeting got canceled. Hooray!
Sorry, we don't want to hear about AI. I hope that you could hear that video okay. I know it was a little bit blurry. I do apologize for my slow computer, but I just wanted to share with you from a young person themselves what the act of letter writing can mean for them and represent and be like for others to experience. I wonder whether now's a good time to give you all the opportunity to have a go at this yourself, to see, so that you can experience it firsthand and know what we're inviting young people to be doing. Are you all up for that? I'm getting some nods of encouragement. Okay, great. So you've got your pen and paper to hand, and but the first thing I'd like to do is going to be a bit interactive, because obviously if you were in a classroom or in a live workshop in person, you'd have the opportunity to share with each other before writing your letter. Certainly that's what our resources invite. So a different prompt for the chat this time. If you could type into the chat your first name and a place in nature that you particularly love or feel connected with, somewhere outdoors or something about nature that you particularly love or feel connected with. And you can take a moment to consider that. And I often encourage going with your first. What comes to mind first?
Question a place.
Might be somewhere, it might be a memory of somewhere or somewhere that you visit regularly? It's beautiful, and you can begin to read other people's responses as well. So Louise loves the woods at the back of her house. Chantal, the Norfolk skies. Les loves piles of leaves. Nearly there with the autumn here. Sarah, big skies. Kathy, the beach, being by the sea. And I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Louise, at Kintyre in Scotland?
Entire.
Kintyre.
Yeah.
Is that a place?
Yeah. I mean, it's a zone. I don't know very well.
We've got the sea in Treville Bay, Cornwall from Siobhan. Lexia, the rocky, secluded beach close to where her mum lives. Rachel loves the Gwythian Towans in Cornwall. I don't know that. Can you share what that is, Rachel?
It's the Towans. It's like the bit of land between the beach and like fields. It's kind of like sandy dunes.
The bit between beach and the fields. Okay, lovely. The edge.
Yeah.
Hugging trees from Chantal, and Rachel from Juliet, the water lily ponds. Beautiful. If I was to share right now, I'd probably say the oak trees in the park opposite my house, which just stand like big guardians, majestic with their branches. Beautiful. It's really lovely to bring the outside in, especially whilst we're on screen. So yeah, cultivating and keeping that connection alive as we go through this process. And it in fact might be something that you want to stay connected with your letter writing, or you might be inspired by something of nature that someone else has shared. So I'd like you to have a think about, and these are going off the prompts that are in our educational resources that you may have seen. What's something that we invite young people to share or ask themselves is to respond to the question, when I think about the future, I feel. And so again, we can use the chat. So if you were to finish the sentence, when I think about the future, I feel, you can type into the chat what it is that you feel when you think about the future. If any of you would prefer to say it out loud, you're very welcome to as well. And thank you for sharing these and touching into it, and just reminding all of us to keep breathing as we feel or read these emotions. And just to comment on how, with young people in particular, so important to be doing this in person, and to do it in quite an active way if this is a prompt that wants to be explored. So with young people being up on their feet, and we do sometimes place emotions on the floor for people to move to, and stand by what resonates, or to write the emotion on a bit of paper and place it on the floor or on the wall. So it's something that's being taken outside of them and placed in space. So just to read back here, we've got anxious, uncertain, pretty scared, grief, dread, blind, sadness and frustration, but also love and care, worry, And when I think about the future, I feel deep concern, but also a great curiosity. Will we end up making, what will we end up making of ourselves? Uncertain, sometimes hopeful, sometimes despairing, blank. And yes, some hopefulness and curiosity about a different way of life. Thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing this. And this, you know, it's really at a teacher's or educator's discretion as to how they, if they'd want to bring this like territory of mapping and exploring the emotional reality into the classroom. But for us at Let Us See Earth, we recognise the importance of this. And yes, it can be challenging, or there can be fear around even doing this, but we recognise that what happens next is the opportunity in acknowledging that these feelings are here, we have the opportunity to transform them and to gain a sense of agency in response to them. Knowing also that these, as I'm sure many in this room acknowledge too, and are familiar with this work, that these are all natural responses to this crisis, and they are healthy responses. It is showing that we are feeling what's happening, and we are responding as any healthy person would. And so knowing staying connected to what's being brought into the room, we also have a prompt to invite people to share if they could change anything about the state of the planet, or change anything in relation to what's happening and our relationship to the future, then what would it be? And this is where we invite really big thinking, and especially from young people. As I said, we can get all sorts of ideas here. But if you were to complete the sentence, if I could change anything, then great, we've got smash capitalism already in there, brilliant. You can type in, again, what first comes to mind. And often we're getting at like the heart of something, and we're getting to the heart of what might matter to someone here as well. And it might be something that's in direct response to how you feel about the future, or it might even be in relationship to your connection with nature that was shared earlier. So we've got donut economics, 100% renewable energy, limits to personal wealth, awareness of being part of nature, not separate from it, a worldwide deliberate assembly of 10,000 young people. I'd love to see that, or make it happen. So many ideas, they're going so quickly. And decriminalize climate protest, decentralize governance, take away the illusionary need for stuff in order to feel at peace, return to living in community, localization, valuing care and compassion, not wealth, an end to all wars and the beginning of building peace in all countries, intergenerational solidarity. This is beautiful, like big yeses to all of this. And again, if we're to do this in a classroom, I've got one more, Chantal, completely transform our political system to be more citizen-led and far more democratic. Yeah, so we often, in whatever spaces we invite this prompt, this is where we can get a lot of dynamism in the room, as you can imagine. There's lots of energy, lots of ideas, lots of improvisation as well. Lots of people saying, yes, I love that. And what about this? Especially for young people, it can be really empowering. So moving on to another prompt, and this will be the last one before channeling all of this or some of this into a letter. Everything that we've scratched the surface here. I've led you through this very swiftly, and our resources have these prompts in them, and as I've shown, they have many other activities too. And so an educator would judge how best to use these and over what period of time. But we would now invite people to consider, okay, what do you want to give voice to? If there was anything on Earth, and that might be another being, place in nature or a natural element, or it might be an idea for change. If you could give voice to anything right now, what feels most alive and right now, what has most energy around it? Knowing that another day there might be a different letter that you could write. So this is where you can now grab your paper and pen, and you can consider, okay, if I'm going to write a letter, who do I want to write it to? And who from? And as I say, there's lots here that you could choose from. So go with your first instinct, your first gut response. Don't think too much about it, because you can write a different letter at a different time. But right now, with whatever's buzzing in you, it might be in connection to the change that you want to see or that you've heard someone else share, or might be in response to the feeling that you have or that you've heard. You can channel that or speak on behalf of it. And if there's just too much choice here, just go to the simplicity of writing a letter to the earth. So I'll give you all till 7:30. So it's got about 6 minutes to have a go at writing. And if drawing comes more easily for you, then you're very welcome to draw or to doodle or to just throw words down on a page. It doesn't need to be anything that is deemed perfect. So as everyone's returning, and just open it up for anyone to share if they'd like to, how that process was for them. But also, Siobhan, I'm thinking about you, whether this might be an opportunity for some questions, or whether we do breakout room.
Hi, thanks, Kay. I mean, personally, I feel like there's just enough of us to stay together.
Great.
I had way too many things buzzing around to write, so it was quite hard to focus on one aspect and one letter. But I did do that. But I feel like I've got loads more letters inside of me. I don't know about other people, how they found it. But maybe if we spend some time talking about how we found it and how it felt for us, and then we could perhaps ask questions, and we could also talk about whether we feel we could actually take it further into our work or, our personal lives with our family and whatever. Louise.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for that. I really got a lot out of it in that short space of time. It felt incredibly cathartic and quite deep. When we were watching the video of the children, what was for me was thinking about writing a letter. I was just really tuned into the sort of what can be seen to be anger at other people who are causing climate crisis, or anger at older generations, or that kind of, it made me think of, in therapeutic settings, people might be encouraged to write a letter to an abusive parent, say, to really kind of let that out. And I have written a letter to the earth in the nice sort of directly to the earth way before, but what I did just now was I wrote a letter to the parts of the human psyche that have got out of control, the sort of patriarchal, individualistic, extractive, capitalist parts of us, because that to me is part of the earth. It's part of existence, and so I was writing a letter, a sort of angry letter, expressing my sadness, rage, frustration, disappointment to that part of what I see as the earth. You know, we are part of the earth as far as I'm concerned. And it was from the more sort of, you know, the, if you will, the feminine, sort of intuitive, connected, indigenous wisdom side of existence that's been silenced for so long. So, but do you know what was so beautiful? Just in that short space of time, it quite naturally came to the end of a place of forgiveness and embracing it. And I actually ended on "I love you," which I wouldn't have planned to have done. So beautiful process for me today. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks so much, Louise. Yeah, I'll just share back before I hand over to Siobhan that I mean it's wonderful that you achieved all that in the 6 or 7 minutes, and actually 7 minutes is often what we do give people, and it can sometimes be like, oh, that's never going to be enough time, but actually it means that people can really surface what's immediately accessible and really just really focus as well, and know that something will, and trust that something will come. It's not always the case for everyone. I recognize that might not be the case for everyone. And also, as someone that has read thousands of the letters that we have, because I am like the custodian of a lot of people's letters to the earth, that journey of arriving at acceptance and forgiveness is very common. And I think that it speaks to also the therapeutic power of this activity for the individual that goes on that journey, and then what that means for the kind of action or connectivity and relationships that come from that place as well. So thank you for naming that, and that's great that, yeah, what a wonderful experience you had there.
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you, Louise. It's so interesting as well how sort of really different aspects can come out, and how that exercise you did about, you know, those few questions just really sparks so much that sort of could lead to all these different avenues for people to write about. It's amazing. Les, were you gonna tell us something?
Well, it was just really to echo what Louise said. The cathartic was the word that I had in my mind as well. I saw a pigeon get run over today, and by a great big SUV, and so my letter was from a pigeon, and by the end had also reached that point of, you know, now that you see me, do things differently, be more careful, be more caring. So I completely identify with what Louise said.
Wow, thank you. That's very powerful to hear.
Would anybody else like to share how it either how it felt to write it, what you wrote about, or even read us a couple of sentences?
I'm not sure if I'll read mine, but I was surprised. I thought I'd start writing something that felt a little bit more angry, but actually in the end I wrote from the perspective of the ivy to the apple tree in my garden at home where I grew up. There's always this apple tree that over the years has been eaten away by this ivy. And it's about how they've become closer over time. Yeah, that was mine.
Great, thank you. That's, I mean, these are incredibly creative. This is what I'm hearing. There's really wonderful perspectives to be tuning into, and to recognize the interbeing of it all and of all of us in this. So that's what I'm hearing coming through as well. So I'm really grateful that you all went on that journey and have experienced it. And I wonder if anyone, you're very welcome to continue sharing specifically on the exercise and how it was for you. But also if anyone wants to ask questions or share reflections on the educational resources or how this can work with young people. Yeah, Louise.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Just a quick question, and sorry if you've said this. Have you considered or have you submitted your resources to the DFE Sustainability Support for Education Hub?
No, we haven't. If anyone would like to help us do that, then let me know.
It's not as bad as you think. I'll put the link in the chat.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Already up in the chat above, but I can repaste it because it's high up. Or is there a separate link to submit?
There's a separate link to submit.
Okay, then give that. Yeah.
I'll try and find it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're a small, under-resourced organisation. So we have, although we've had the project funding at various times to actually design and pilot and release these resources, and we've done what we can to distribute them, we haven't done as much as we need to distribute them widely. So that's why we're very grateful for this call, but also any and all opportunities for more teachers and educators to discover them is absolutely what we would like. So thanks, Louise. Yeah, Sarah. Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't negotiate the buttons there for a minute. I suppose my question about it is, do feelings run high, and how is that managed? Does the process in itself help people to deal with that?
It's been quite different according to the settings, in my experience, and the emotions can run high. I think that that's more likely these days, especially if this is being given to a group who, for example, are working in the climate or nature sphere, or are activists, for example, so who are carrying a lot on their shoulders. When it comes to schools and young people, in the experience that we've had, most children are actually engaged on this subject matter, and care a lot and have lots of ideas. So there's less, only from the experience I've had, there's less emotion actually coming from young people in terms of, or at least it's not being expressed visibly, but there's a lot of energy that comes out in the creativity and in their ideas. And in terms of how, the emotion is supported, we, especially in our community resource toolkits, do talk about, and maybe I'll get the link up on the screen so you can have a look whilst I'm talking. We do reference, and some of you might know of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the psychologist, and the grief curve. And so we, not so much with young people, but in our community workshop program, we do a mapping exercise, as I described earlier, and invite people to share in pairs or someone close to them, where they might be at on that map and what's coming up for them and how they're feeling. We are always saying prior to a workshop, or even in the marketing material of a workshop, that this is going to be exploring our responses, our personal responses to the climate nature crisis. And we're recognizing the need, or we're recognizing that there is a desire for people to be warned about that. Though it's a really tricky one, because as I said, we also want to deliberately create the space, and a safe enough space for that to happen, and build in all the more trauma-informed processes that might include like breathing and pausing, and movement as well, physical movement, so that people aren't getting stuck. I think there is more that can be done on this, but certainly for young people, it interestingly we haven't experienced a huge amount of visible emotion. That's not to say it's not there.
Mm.
Don't know if anyone else I know that might not be a fully satisfactory answer. So if anyone wants to share about that or talk about it with me, then you're very welcome. Did I hear Les? But I know Louise got her hand up as well.
Yeah, Les has had.
I've got a comment, but Louise, you go first because you might be on this particular point.
Oh no, sorry, Liz. I don't mean to jump the queue. You go ahead.
Well, I had a couple of thoughts. One was around Forest School that I'm involved in, where we send our children off to do a sit spot where they kind of sit for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes in nature, and we quite often do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, and so on. But it strikes me that this could be the sort of exercise that they could do in that time and come back and sort of orally talk about things. The other thing I was thinking about Sarah and her interest in the intergenerational side of things, and just wondered if letters to the earth is what you're doing, but whether there's letters to my children or letters to our descendants, or some sort of intergenerational angle that you could work on, so that you could take this out more widely to different audiences.
Yeah, so we I think it was 2 years ago in 2020, there was a partnership with XR families, but I think Parents for the Future were involved as well, where there was a call out specifically for letters to my children. I think that's right. It was a while ago, but it was specifically for parents to write letters to their children, either as they are now or in the future. And although that was obviously quite a process for the adults to go on, I don't know, because I wasn't involved in the coordination or facilitation of that, but I do think there's an interesting question as to, well, what happened if were those letters ever actually read to the children? I don't know. There was a media campaign created around it, but that's certainly a really interesting area to explore. I wonder if Sarah, do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, my interest is specifically around how the generations talk about this together, and how we overcome the sort of narratives of intergenerational blame that are, thrown about by the media, which I feel are really unhelpful. So really, that's my direction of travel, is how you can generate those conversations either within families or within communities. And there is some work that does do that.
I mean, it's definitely an opportunity. And I mean, and also to answer some of your question, Les, our resources are freely available. And so there's to a certain extent, I don't know what everyone's doing with them. And that's great. And it means that some people may well have been devising these kinds of activities or pathways, or deciding to run their own specific letter writing campaign, as Parents for the Future did a few years ago. And we invite that, and we welcome collaboration on it and partnership. There is, with our educational resources, we do invite the opportunity, or invite the schools to consider hosting, as I said, events for those young people to read their letters with the adults in the community, and to hear the responses, or to start a dialogue. Now, I've not facilitated that myself, but there may well be schools that have done that, and I certainly think that's something interesting to be doing, and for it to be taken very seriously, not to be tokenistic or just feigning that we're listening to children, but really truly putting children at the centre of action and ideas and decision making. And that has come up as an idea before within people's letters. And what would it be like for children to be, in control? Louise.
Yeah, thanks. Such an interesting discussion on this. Just to reflect on what was just being shared, like there's so many interesting directions that could be done with this in terms of who's writing to whom. All I would say is that if you're writing knowing it's going to be read, that's a completely different exercise than if you're just doing it for yourself. But I actually put my hand up to reflect on Sarah's question about emotions coming up, and just to say that I would, given the way that this is, you said, Kate, it's about the pupil's voice, the child's voice coming through. I would suggest that the emotions coming through is exactly what we want, and not to be scared of that. And yes, you can hold that with self-regulatory activities before and after, and, setting the context in the right way. But I would suggest that's a good thing. All I would say is the question that we were asked, when you think about the future, how do you feel? If I were doing that with a class group, I'd probably want to flag up the emotional reasoning trap, whereby, so I wrote dread, right? But just because I write and I feel a bit of dread, that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, or it doesn't say anything about the actual future. And if we are doing that with children, we need to make that super clear that other people, what other people say doesn't reflect the actual likelihood of things happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We just as a side note, in our community workshops, we've not been using the future framing, and it may well be a case that our educational resources could do with some tweaks or updates. But we've explored, and now I'm more regularly inviting the prompt of, when you think about the state of the planet, what do you feel? And so it's deliberately not using climate change as a frame, or as, not using that language. We're not saying nature, we're not saying climate or nature crisis or emergency, but we're just saying, when you think about the state of the planet, what do you feel? Be curious to hear if that would bring up a similar caution that you'd want to invite for young people.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me that feels more appropriate. It's giving unnecessary space to unfounded, mental fantasies that might be going on for some people and have that influence other people. So yeah, I think that keeping it in the present is more appropriate, given the uncertainty about a future. No one really knows. We just don't have any clue, do we?
Yeah,
we're going to pan out. So anyone that thinks that they do is
yeah.
A lot of people did put uncertainty, didn't they, Louise? Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of these questions relate to how it's kind of woven in with other work. And it looks like on your resource pages that you've thought about different ages, and you've thought about different ways of introducing it. But for me, ideally, it would be part of a whole sort of program of focus on emotional well-being and inner work. And if there were things that I take Louise's point completely, that you kind of hope things do come out, because we do actually want to start the processing, and we want to start these things being talked about and being out in the open. But then you'd hope that maybe it was part of our ongoing work with different kinds of approaches and ways of addressing and holding spaces for this kind of emotional side of thinking about the future and about now, what's going on now. I just wanted to ask a quick question. I don't know if you've got any experience of this, Kay, but I loved the idea that there were also prompts for debating amongst secondary students. I really like that idea, and that maybe sometimes the things that come out of the letters might spark a kind of, there's I love philosophy in schools and the work that they do on those sorts of things, because I think a lot of in education we kind of lost that that sort of opening up of discussion and debate, and kids being able to kind of disagree with each other and kind of argue about things. And I'd love it if it to have some prompts for that.
Well, I've just put on the shared screen where that is in the secondary school resource toolkit. So this exercise of researching which countries have the highest carbon footprint per capita, and what demographics are likely to have higher carbon footprints, and then considering the following debate. Governments and corporations create the systems that we all live within. We must focus on pressuring them to make the changes necessary to reduce global warming. So arguing for that or arguing against. But as long as we use fossil fuels, we are part of the problem. Change begins at home, and we must focus on making changes in our own lives, encouraging others to do the same. Yeah, that's an example of one, and there could be many others. But I think what that is doing is getting young people to consider how change can happen, right? And different methodologies or positionings on that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, we've got 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions while we've got Kay here? How about how people might go away from the call in terms of how you might think about using this approach? And does anybody have opportunities?
I'm thinking about stealing it for our Climate Psychology Alliance workshop.
Yes, so was I. That did occur to me, Louise. Yeah.
Well, they are there to be used, and we just ask that do connect with us so that we know what's happening and we can amplify and share learnings, and if there's opportunities to collaborate as well, so that we can further the work. But yeah, they are there to be used.
Alexia?
Yeah, well, I think I might implement some of the more concrete resources in some meetings I'm setting up here in the Netherlands, collaborating with a friend. And you started this project already a while ago. It's called Feel and Rise, and it's basically a small publication taking the form of a free zine. So like a small pamphlet that we aim to distribute widely, and in like many different also unusual suspect places, like banks or sports clubs, but also your usual community centers. And it just showcases poems and art and text about feelings about being in this world right now. And so we're also applied for a EU grant to be able to, it's a small one, but to be able to kind of cover the operating costs of also hosting dinners with dialogue. And there was already ideas of implementing some sort of, writing prompts and encouraging people to write stuff at these events that then can contribute as submissions. But maybe we'll do a specific kind of letters to the earth focused one, and we'll make sure to connect with UK. But yeah, it's been anyways very, very nice to hear everything about the framework, and the tips seem very helpful. So thank you.
Thanks, Alexia. That sounds amazing. It kind of does connect a lot with the kind of storytelling as well. Do you think, Kate, about which, is one of the ways that people really connect into thinking about their feelings about the state of the planet, isn't it? Sarah?
I was thinking, because I'm in my second year now at Queen Mary, and so I'm part of a team that puts on postgraduate sessions, which can be to do with research or, and this is in the arts and humanities. It can be to do with research or a way of making performance or helping people to think about things. So I think Letters to the Earth, a session would be really good for that community. Because certainly I'm part of a critical hope research network at Queen Mary, and that was started by a professor in the geography department who was increasingly concerned about levels of either anxiety or inertia or displayed inertia that was coming through from her students.
Right. Yeah.
So these are young adults. Yeah.
Thank you. We can definitely talk more about that. That's great.
Chantal?
Yeah, I just I think we've talked about this a bit, Kay, maybe in France, but it strikes me that this is a potentially a powerful intervention for anyone who needs to experience that connection with the earth and see themselves as part of nature rather than separate to it. So I can see some ways of using it with, particular kinds of framing and context creating that would be quite powerful. So I'm curious about whether there's been anything like that done, with adults, with leaders, with, I'm thinking about some of the people I work with. But I see that as a powerful possibility. I'm thinking about people that are a bit detached and not allowing themselves to connect and are sort of holding it at arm's length. And I sort of see this as being quite a gentle but at the same time really powerful way of reconnecting and feeling, and then looking at that sort of sense of responsibility without judgment, but in a loving way.
Yeah.
There's just so many applications at all levels. I imagine doing it with businesses and corporate as well.
Yeah, and we have it's kind of it's needed, and it works almost in every setting, because at the end of the day, every setting contains humans who are grappling with this crisis, like you say, who might be holding it at arm's length, or who might be fully like knees deep in and just need more resource, support or community. And so wherever people are on the spectrum of engagement or awareness, we've actually found that this does work for a lot of people.
Sarah, would you like to have the last word or the last question? And then perhaps we'll just end, if you want to think about a word or a phrase that you'd like to just put in the chat to say how you found the call and any follow-up things or comments that you'd like us to take forward with the campaign. Sarah.
It's okay, I didn't have a question. I've just forgotten to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. All right.
Apologies.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your contributions, and huge thanks to you, Kay, for your time and coming to facilitate the workshop. Once again, I'm really sorry about the start. But thank you so much for persisting. And I think, we've had a lovely group, and I've certainly sort of enjoyed sharing and hearing from other people tonight. Alexia, perhaps you can just pop into the chat the details of our next call, which I think is around November the November 3rd or
November
4th.
5th, also Tuesday, same time. And it's with Rachel Muson, the former, she's a former teacher and the director of Thoughtbox Education. So there'll be a sharing on their triple well-being model. And yeah, I think as well, opportunities to connect with different educators and to see how you can apply that framework to students that you're teaching. Yeah. So more details are in the Eventbrite, and hopefully the Zoom will work then, and we will make sure.
We also just may look at rerunning this at some point as well, to allow for the numbers of people who did book on to be able to actually access it. Given that we haven't recorded it, I think it will be important for us to discuss doing a rerun at some point, Kay, if you're up for that.
I think that would be fab.
Yeah,
that would be fab.
Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Really, really great to have your feedback and your enthusiasm, and you're very welcome to connect with me to continue the conversation or to look at how else and where it can be applied. I gave you the education@letterstotheearth.com email address earlier in the chat, but I'll just put it back in here. And we are growing the team and getting more resourced. So if you want to be involved or see there being avenues to boost what we're doing, then do let me know. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everybody. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Hope to see you all again soon.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Kay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.